All Things Data podcast. In the spirit of Daniel Kahneman, Peter Diamandis, and Google Moonshots, brings together leading data scientists, technologists, business model experts, and futurists to discuss how to utilize, harness, and deploy data science and data-driven strategies to enable digital transformation. The hosts are Dr. Manjeet Rege, Associate Professor of Data Science, and Dan Yarmala, Director of Business Development of IoT and Data Science.
What's showing the maturity for me about Atos is how you're approaching it with a end-to-end solution in this, the blending of the portfolio. Because I find, as a person that went back for, his graduate degree in data science and MBA and go to market, you need a little bit of everything, and it has to be a holistic approach. It can't be technology only. And the fact that the company has strategized and pivoted that way is addressing real solutions, and you guys are going to be capitalizing on it. And I don't see too much of that. So kudos to you, because that's the way it should be done.
Thank you. That's one of our key things is using technology within business, but not for technology's sake.
Shows maturity too in delivery, right? Because it's about execution at the end of the day. And Atos is knee deep in traditionally IT services. So it is execution. It's not theory. It's not product only. It's delivery at the end of the day.
We are really strong on delivery. One of the things that we haven't mentioned is that actually we are the IT partner for the Olympic Games and for the Commonwealth Games. We're making use of that as testing grounds for some of these points as well. And we have to be right with our delivery for the Olympic Games. So we run all of the IT systems, the security systems. We do all of the games systems and information display for commentators. And it's not something that you can go and get the 100-meter sprinters to rerun the race because your computers were rebooting due to something going wrong. So it has to be right. And we run sort of 2 years worth of testing on each of the games to get that right. But we're also making use of things like machine learning and AI to sort through the vast amount of data that we get and focus in on the real issues or potential issues that may come out from all of the attempted events and attempted security events that happen within an Olympic Games.
I just want to say we were attacked 400 times a second in the last edition of the Olympic Games, and you can't deal with that manually. So analytics and AI was at the core of the security solution, which we call a prescriptive security operations center. And we've got those deployed around the world for various customers, but especially, our big poster child is the Olympic Games, obviously.
We use that as well as a proving ground for other aspects. We've also got solutions that we use within our one of our clients, which is EDF, to run nuclear power stations in France. So we've been doing that for many years, and we run all of the control systems for nuclear power stations. And for other clients, we look at rotating machinery, gearboxes, and how we do preventative maintenance on rotating gearboxes. And actually then being able to bring in our ability to run secure systems for the Olympics, to run critical systems for nuclear power stations and rotating machines allowed us to go to one of the large theme parks in America and say to them, working with you, we can help you look at your theme park ride and actually do preventative and prescriptive maintenance on that theme park ride. You know the ride, but we know how to look at data from rotating machines. We know how to look at secure data, how to look at rotating, how to look at control systems and bring it all together. And that's what really interested them about being able to bring insight from different businesses. And Dan, this goes back to what you were saying earlier about your vibration sensor, because a lot of these companies that we're working with have got devices that are very old, pre-digital and PLC, and they're worried about how and the investment that they actually have to make in getting some data from them. So we're working with some different companies to come up with innovative ways to actually pull data from 30, 40-year-old machines in terms of sound or vibration or temperature, and actually then use that to create insight, rather than having to sort of reinvest and build and put a new crane in, for example?
Well, in the American paradigm, the infrastructure is aging. All the presidential candidates have been talking about this for a long time, and it's not happening. And also, culturally, the concept of lean has just taken many people out of the factory, exacerbated by people retiring. So the equipment is very old, and they're working with less, so they have to work smarter. But in this delivery mechanism that you and I are all trying to figure out, it's like they do have this old brownfield equipment, and there's no way they're going to invest in this gigantic
Absolutely.
$1 billion new thing. They're going to work on this as long as they can. And my thing was always trying to give them something easy to get to first base, and then we can build upon it. So outcome based, AI, big data, when you talk about this cross-functional end-to-end view, it just kind of tells me what's happening in the digital era. And also as management, like, we have to think about everything, and we can't take it for granted. We can't throw it over the fence. We have to really ponder the problem and solving the problem. And that's how we get it done. I think people have to actually care about their customer and be vested in giving them something that's that value.
Absolutely. And we also have to think outside the box as well. Who'd have thought about having an internet-enabled rat trap? But we actually created it. We build a lot of patents, and we file a lot of patents. I think it's about 5,000 per annum across Atos. So we're an engineering company as well as an IT company, and we developed this internet-enabled rat trap. We've developed sensors that go on tires to measure the wear of tires, and then translate that and transmit it back through a mobile phone built into the cab of every new truck that's issued, so that the tire company can actually sell rubber and kilometers rather than selling the individual tires. So it's about thinking and using technology in different ways to make things work, but making sure that it's cost effective, that it's not, I think, what was it, a Cadillac for the price of a Ford, or whatever the saying would be in America. But you have to have something that makes sense. That really is something that I think is missing from a lot of companies. It's this whole idea of what really makes sense.
Well, also, you have to be I think Atos is in a unique position in delivery and thought leadership and that kind of capital, right? You got to be big but agile, smart but in execution, product based but also service based. So there's a lot of balls in the air. And what I appreciate about the evangelism in the cross functional is, like, again, I'm not going to be a master coder, but at least I've taken enough classes about big data to know what problems are, and then we can get it to the right data scientist with the right subject matter expertise. By no means,
absolutely,
like in one person. So we just have to become more analytics centric. And
and it's one of the big things that I try and get across to clients is that, open your eyes to companies that come in and tell you they've got a model that will describe your business. I would be very dubious about any client, any software company or any services company actually being able to create a model that and an algorithm that was of use to every business in a particular market. And even if they had, what would be the added value of it? So we always go and talk to our clients about the fact that there's many different ways of analyzing the same data, lots of different techniques for it. And we typically put 2 or 3 data scientists onto the data and set them the task of coming up with the best model and the best way of explaining it, because it really, that competitive environment really helps as well. But you're right, it's a difficult thing for us to do sometimes, to be this agile as well as big, to be technology as well as business focused. It can play tough on some of our people and pull them in different directions.
So I just wanted to sort of make the point, it's a bit of an oblique path perhaps, but talking about this concept of scale versus being agile, one of the things we do is we achieve that through partnering. So if I take the example of the financial services industry, we partner with a lot of fintechs, right? And we combine their solutions with our Codex solutions and a platform, and we come up with value propositions and offerings for banks and insurance companies who are thinking in the new digital age. So Deutsche Bank, for example, massive bank in Europe, they are working on neobanks, which is sort of the new digital, agile, online, disruptive banks in the financial services industry. And they want to be working with these fintechs, whether it's to do with blockchain or whether it's to do with sentiment analysis or whether it's to do with cybersecurity for dark web or whatever it is. But those fintechs haven't got something which is scalable enough necessarily. So working together with us, putting it on our platform, we are able to combine scale and agility that our customers are looking for. And we're working with some really cool companies. So, Ripple with blockchain, for example, OverAI, which is will.i.am's company of personal assistants, Aleph, Fellow, Expert Systems, Backbase, Cyberbreaker, Cinequa, Lincurious. I mean, the list goes on and on. We've got probably 60 odd that we have either partnered with or are in the process of partnering with. And we're continuously looking for other fintechs to join that ecosystem. That's just one example in the financial services industry, but we do that, of course, for all verticals.
Andrew, I want to go back to what you said earlier about, some of the efforts a lot of companies had was, let's hire a bunch of data scientists and throw this data at them and then have them look at the insight, as opposed to thinking about what is the business value of this. Can you also talk about how does one embed analytics into the culture and embed analytics into the business process? Because when you hire, when you take this approach of hiring people and then have them look into this archive data, much of that data was not collected with the goal of performing analytics. But if you embed analytics into your culture and into your data collection process, then I think the eventual goal of performing analytics might be much more easier.
It's a very good point. It's also, I think you've hit on one of the other key points, that there's so much data within a business that sometimes data scientists become overwhelmed by looking backwards at the data, and they don't actually look forwards and sideways. They can become blind to some of the things that you can do with external data in terms of the contextual parts, the qualitative parts that add real value to the quantitative data that comes from inside your business. An example of that was a supermarket chain we worked with in the UK came to us and asked us to help them reduce their waste on perishable foods. And we looked at that and thought, well, actually, to have waste, you've got to have the forecast wrong. You've either got too much, you've got too much of the product. So we went back and said, you're obviously getting your forecast wrong. And they went, no, we've got a big team of analytics team who've built very complex models to look at all of the data, to forecast it, and they provide a very accurate forecast of sales based on all of the past sales within the store. And we said, well, if that's the case, you can't have waste because you'd have an accurate forecast. And that sort of triggered some things in their minds. So we then took the same data and worked with, as Julien was saying, a specialist partner who had some experience of retailing, but we brought in external data. So we brought in things like payroll date, like major events, like the weather. And actually, our predictions of sales turned out to be 8 percentage points more accurate than the internal teams, just by looking at that qualitative data. That reduced their overstock by 98%. So their wastage by 98%. But conversely, it actually highlighted some white space on the shelf that could be filled with more product, and it would have increased their sales in that area by 90%. So just by looking outside, not at backwards, can really help in terms of building models and algorithms that really help define what's going on. But then it's about, how do you get that information across? And it was something you were talking about earlier, Dan, in terms of people not going and looking at 5 different dashboards or even looking at a report. In my world, you shouldn't have to go and look for a report. You shouldn't have to go and look for insight. It actually should be embedded into whatever you're doing. It should be presented to you as part of your daily life. So if you're just about to actually do something as part of a business process, the right information should be presented in a correct way, in a visualization that allows you to make a better decision right at that point of decision to improve it. But that does give us then another dilemma in terms of auditing things for the future. So actually tracking the information and the insight that was delivered to people at the point of decision, and tracking what was delivered, so that actually if we need to go back and look at why someone made that decision, that critical decision, and they say, well, the system said and presented this insight, and look, it looked like this, so that's why I did that. We actually need to be able to recreate that in a way, an audited fashion, so that that can be proved. And that's one of these sort of dilemmas, that we're creating data, and we're creating data about data. So this sort of tsunami of data is just going to get bigger and bigger. And it's, you know, something that we've actually worked with a number of our clients to be able to prove what's going on, embed the data, embed the insight into new applications, microservices, so that people don't actually have to go and look for a report. It's there for them.
You know, that's a great point. And making data about the data, metadata. I met a company called Octopi out of Israel that has a great metadata management tool, because we have to look at the problem differently, other than just the shiny object or machine learning or the sexy thing. But I want to ask a few more questions before we run out of time. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because it's super cool, can you guys tell me a little bit about the quantum computing stuff you're doing? Because very few people are doing that.
In the last 3 or 4 years, we've been acquiring businesses to develop in the analytics space, in the high performance compute space. In the North America, we acquired ZData, really great data science company. But a couple of years ago, we actually acquired Bull and Bull Technologies, who have been, I think they're the oldest European manufacturer of computers, and they're really into high performance analytics platform compute and appliance computers, making machines that are very highly performant. And one of the things that we've started and kicked off is a quantum group, looking with some of the brightest brains around Europe and the world to actually develop new quantum computers. And we've got the first quantum simulators now working, and have delivered those first quantum simulators to some of the world's leading businesses, to actually allow the first types of new ideas and new processing concepts to be investigated and developed on them. But as you can tell, that's about the limit of my experience around quantum. And if you'd like to have further details, Dan, I can really put you in touch with the people who really understand it at a much higher level than me.
Again, I'm also not an expert in this area, but I know that we're doing a lot of stuff, for example, cognitive assistance for the aerospace industry, which goes a lot further than bots just suggesting steps, because that's linked into automated translation. It's linked into all of the work documents, the specifications, connected to augmented reality devices for workshop and for manufacturing settings. I know that we're doing a lot of work in our high performance data analytics competency center around artificial intelligence and machine learning and NLP and deep learning. The reason that was set up basically was because we understand architectures are becoming more powerful, architectures are becoming more complex, the options are more numerous, the workflows have to be modernized, and just coping with the sheer amount of data, of course, is increasingly impossible. We've developed a core engine, algorithmic modules and services and pre-trained models, applying to the use cases around prescriptive cybersecurity, which I mentioned before, to anomaly detection, to distributed operations, to RT Swarm CP, and also the infrastructure underneath that, which is required. And again, that goes all the way up the scale to the quantum simulators that Andrew mentioned. So it's a huge area of interest for us. It's a huge area of investment for us. And it's something that we think we're probably fairly much on the cutting edge at the moment. To
build on that, Julien, apparently it's we're now simulating real qubits within our quantum learning machine. So we're able to successfully model quantum noise. And I just think
exactly.
it's an area of technology that is way past my level of understanding, but I just know it's being able to do things very, very quickly, different ways. So we're actually allowing the new researchers to start developing their new algorithms using these simulators so that it will improve things.
Where we are in terms of quantum computing, and we got up to 42 or 43 qubits, and each qubit on top, of course, is an extra leap by a factor. We got to a very high level, also being able to simulate the noise as well. So, yeah, it's a hugely exciting area for us.
So, we've been talking about making intelligent use of data for providing value, especially what recently happened with Facebook, for example. Based on the data, when you are providing value to the consumer that the consumer likes, the consumer is happy. The moment something goes wrong with that same data, the consumer becomes unhappy, right? Because especially with IoT, you have access to people's homes. You have a thermostat, you have a smart doorbell, things like that. And all of that data is being backed up in the cloud. If there is a security breach, consumer becomes unhappy. So, there is a important balance between access and protection. What are your thoughts on that?
Very much so, and it is that you said the word balance. Users can see it in terms of a difficult to use that difficult to use balance versus difficult to hack. So things are often a pain to access from a user point of view, from a good reason, because it's there to prevent unauthorized access. It could, of course, be poor design, but it's there to make it difficult for the hackers. But we've got to, as a society, start looking at what do we really want to do, and how prepared are we to allow others access to the data and to our physical areas. So with the likes of Amazon looking at door systems and door security to allow parcel deliveries and things, or having the ability to give the plumber or electrician access to your home for a certain period of time. It's that whole aspect of, do I trust it? It's okay until it goes wrong. And the first time it goes wrong, you lose all trust in not just the technology, but the whole process. And it's not so much the technology that goes wrong, it's actually our ability to use it and our ability to put the processes and the sort of society governance around it. Facebook, it wasn't the technology that went wrong. In my view, it's the way that things have been used. And it's that whole aspect that surrounds it. So I think technology gets a bad name often for failing. It's typically down to the social things that we do, not changing passwords, not setting things up right, trying to do things that are beyond our capabilities because companies try and make them easy to use. We all have to be cognizant of the fact that really anything that's connected has the potential to be connected to someone else as well as to ourselves. So we have to be aware of that.
Yeah, trust and compliance is incredibly important. And the customers we work with, and I'm sure it's true for everybody, they require security across the full value chain from device to data center. So the only way to tackle that is security by design. And security by design is what we live and die by, and it's in our DNA. When I mentioned before the 400 attacks per second at the Olympic Games, we have the honor for a couple of weeks a year, every 2 years in the Winter or Summer Olympics, to take over from the FBI as the most attacked organization in the world in terms of cyber security. So we know what we're talking about when it comes to making sure that what we deliver is secure.
Julien and Andrew, we want to thank the both of you for taking out the time to speak with us. This was a great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks very much for your time. Thanks for the opportunity to talk.